And a very good morning to you. Welcome along to Off the Ball AM this morning. Pardon me. We have a very busy week of sport to talk about. We're going to look back a little bit today, and we're going to look forward a little bit too. And we also are going to talk to two of our brightest young stars strutting their stuff on the world stage. A little bit later, we're going to talk with debutant in the NFL and one of the fastest women in Irish racing history. So we're going to talk about this a little bit later on. In the meantime, Shane Stapleton's here. How are you?
I'm good, Jerry.
With your helmet.
Yeah.
Your dirty helmet needs polished.
Definitely the one.
It's a bit dusty.
Yeah, it's good. It actually really is manky. Why is that? What's that doing up there?
I have no idea.
So we're going to put a bunch of names. This is here for a reason. It's a draw. It's the proverbial hat that we're drawing names from.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So, I've been doing a few polls for the hurling show in recent weeks. Last week was
What's the hurling show, Shane?
Oh yeah, it's this thing that goes on every Friday talking about the greatest sport in the world, Jared. Didn't you know? So the polls have been going nuts. Last week was who is the silkiest, purest striker of a ball in hurling.
Who won?
In the initial vote, which was based on suggestions, I put up the 4 options. So the suggestions I got most were Joe Canning, Patrick Horgan, Noel McGrath and Bubbles O'Dwyer. So Joe Canning won that one. He got, I think, 39%, something like that. And then there was such a fallout for the whole week. People saying, why isn't TJ Reid in here? This is bias, even though I picked it based on suggestions. That on Thursday night, late on, I said, okay, if there's 100 likes before 8 a.m. in the morning.
Oh, the old click and like and thirsty.
Yeah. Reeling them in.
It's disgusting.
By 50 minutes later, there was 100 likes.
You're supposed to lock your Twitter account when you're doing that kind of stuff, so that the public can't see it.
The thing is, you give out about rugby terminology about getting to the emotional pitch, and then you run a poll on the silkiest, wristiest, purest.
But this is something that people actually talk about in hurling. You know, I mean, people don't surely rugby people don't sit in Kylie's pub and talk about the emotion that was shown out there today. Whereas in hurling, you know, when you're in the local pub, you are talking about, geez, he's a fair, lovely strike, hasn't he?
Actually must get
he's as windy as a bad dog,
yeah.
But he has a lovely strike.
2 Sundays ago on the Sunday game, Kieran Whelan referred to a team crossing the gain line.
Yeah.
It's like, when it came to, maybe it was a team coming up against Tyrone, and it was breaking down the blanket, and he referred to crossing the gain line. I was like, Shane Stapleton would love that.
Yeah, and I've seen it bleed into GAA talk last year. I saw Tomas O'Shea. I like his columns, but I saw him talking about getting to the emotional pitch one day, and I thought, that hurts Tomas, because that's a sure sign that that's coming into the GAA world, and it just is. There's no getting away from it. But anyway, so your man, there was 100 likes after 50 minutes, so this just shows the tribalism that's out there. People want to back their own. So I said, okay, I did another one with TJ Reid, starting then. The first poll had gotten 1,700 likes, or 1,700 votes, which is
not that we care about the numbers, but go on.
Look, I'm just legitimising doing it. It's not like 20 people did the poll. And then the second one, it was up for 12 hours and 1,100 people voted.
Right.
And after all the tribalism, TJ Reid ends up third anyway. I had to drop Bubbles because he came last in the first like that, so especially after being dropped from the team this year as well. So, yeah, sorry about that, Bubbles.
Art imitating life.
Yeah. So for this week, then, I decided I'll do another poll, which is based on who is the best hurler in Ireland. And I said I'll take in the top suggestions I get. I was going to get 8 and do it sort of like draw players against each other in lots. So you'd have a quarterfinal, semi-final and a final.
But now you're going to string it out over about 10 weeks.
Yeah, I'm going to go full World Cup, 48 teams in it. I know, I'm going to pick the top 16 hurlers and have them drawn off against each other, full World Cup style. The first 2 players against each other. They get through the semi-final, you know.
And do you have a chart in your bedroom about your follower count growing with all these likes and polls?
I didn't realise I was going to get sandbagged over this one, but thank you very much. Yeah, that's exactly what's happening. It's always a character assassination with you two, isn't it?
At least you can take it. Is Owen Murphy in this?
What? Oh yeah, definitely. Owen Murphy, touch of class. Why wouldn't he be? Will I go through a few of the names? We're going to do the draw in a little bit.
Yeah, go through the names now and we'll do the draw a little bit later. So.
All right. Well, look, first of all, I'm going to mention a few of the names that were left out because I decided there's, you know the way Galway are so good at the moment, you could pick 5 Galway names and you're going to get murdered for it anyway. So I'm just going to do 3 per county in total. So I've left out Conor Whelan, Grode McInerney and David Burke as well, you know, which cuts me up. I wanted them in, but you would say Joe Canning has to be in there. You'd murder me over that, wouldn't you?
He should be, yeah.
Yeah, and on form, he's definitely in there as well. Pádraig Mannion, I think, has been basically one of the best players in the country for a good while now at the moment, so I think he gets in there. Daithí Burke, any debates on those?
No, you can't debate that.
You can't, like Conor Whelan, I'd really want him in there.
Sorry, it's only 3 per county.
Yeah.
So that's where the debate can come in. Who are your 3 Galway players, really, isn't it?
Yeah. So that one's big. TJ Reid, I think, definitely the best player in the country. I don't think there's...
You're kind of presupposing who's going to win this now, aren't you?
Not really, because...
It's a public vote.
Like I didn't necessarily... by the way, Patrick Horgan won that second silkiest hurler vote, by the way. But, like, people don't necessarily agree.
Patrick Horgan came from behind. When the Kilkenny vote swung, when they took that away from... Who won the first time? Joe?
The first one was Joe, and it was a Tipperary vote that was split. I'm not sure that would have all of a sudden meant that...
Like going to Patrick Horgan?
Yeah.
That makes no sense.
I don't know. That's just the way it worked out. So TJ Reid is in there as well. John Conlon, basically been hurler of the year so far. So imagine in the first round if you had TJ Reid versus John Conlon. Imagine, Ger.
Yeah, group of death.
Yeah, just imagine.
If only we had hot balls, Tommy. If only we could get hot balls for our dusty helmet.
Seamus Hardy and Patrick Horgan, they've been up there with the best. Owen Murphy, unbelievable goalkeeper. I've been saying for the last good while he's the greatest goalie of all time, Ger, haven't I?
You've been banging on about it?
And he's proved you right this year, hasn't he?
He has.
Every time he's made a save, it's like... we have to give credit to Shane.
Every time he makes a mistake, though, I'm like, that's my fault.
Even going back to 2014, he was probably the difference between Tip and Kilkenny in those two All-Ireland finals. He was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Definitely the first day. Austin Gleeson, he mightn't have had his greatest season of all time, but he was hurler of the year a couple of years ago. We all know what he can do. Paddy Maher for Tip. Tip have been very poor this year, really left a season behind them. I think Chris Crummy is unbelievable. Like he scored 4 points from play in one of the games for Dublin this year. He's just totemic, really, for Dublin. And by the way, I think they're going to be on the up again next year. Jamie Barron should have been hurler of the year last year, as far as I'm concerned. Tony Kelly, brilliant. Pádraig Walsh, brilliant. Seamus Callan, even though he had an injury-ravaged year, he's still up there with the best hurlers ever. He scored something like... was it 16 goals in 3 seasons up until a couple of years ago. And a bit of an outlier then, I'd go with Tom Morrissey. I think he's been unbelievable for Limerick this year. I was tempted to put in Cian Lynch, but there's a little bit of populism to go with that you're just putting him in because he is the flashy player that everyone knows. But I think Tom Morrissey has been just unbelievable.
The Aaron Gallan suspension, it's probably kept him off that list.
Yeah, like he's another guy actually who could have been in the silky...
He was going so well up until that point.
Yeah, he's been absolutely brilliant. Graham Mulcahy as well. Declan Hannon's been excellent. A few people said Diarmuid Burns, but that's the 16 I've gone for. I'm sure people will be unhappy that Mark Coleman isn't in there.
Yeah.
Like Richie Hogan, if he was fit, I think he's in the top 5 hurlers.
Is there a possibility Richie Hogan has the same end of career experience as Michael Fennelly in that state? That he came back this year, got on the field, but is done now? Or is he going to hopefully actually be able to restore the body to something?
I'd hope he'd be able to restore. Well, not if he's playing Tipperary, I wouldn't. But like the way he came back this year, played 70 minutes, scored, was it 1-3? He's only just turning 30 now as well.
Yeah.
So I'd imagine he's got another couple of years in him. For Kilkenny's sake, they'll need him to, because he's turning 30. TJ Reid is turning 31, and I think a lot of the younger players against Galway on Sunday showing that they're not ready just yet. A few of them, like, they're sort of gave 5 out of 10 performances, which won't do.
Yeah,
himself and Bubbles missing out is kind of like Italy and the Netherlands missing out in this year's World Cup. So somebody has. So you have to leave a big hitter out. So
yeah, it takes the glamour out of it, doesn't it?
But in a certain way, it adds a glamour as well. It adds a realism to the situation.
Yeah, we don't have any donkey players in here either. They're all top players.
All right, so that draw is coming up a little bit later on, and we'll ask you to contribute your thoughts on Twitter @OffTheBall or @OffTheBallAM if you want the specific Twitter account for this show. What's coming up? The sports pages will do that. We'll also talk about the weekend's hurling action, the action on the pitch, as opposed to this manufactured clickbait that we've we've also got Colin O'Riordan talking to us on Skype from Sydney after making his debut for the Sydney Swans. We have Bray versus Wiggins is David Brailsford, and then Gina Akpi-Moses is going to join us just after 9 o'clock to talk to us about an amazing week for Irish sprinters. What, are you talking to me? No.
I presume that's to do with the Bray story. I'm not sure why it's Bray against Wiggins.
Yeah, what's the verses though? Okay. So it's not Brailsford versus Wiggins, it's Bray Wanderers and Bradley Wiggins. It should have been a comma instead of a verses there. But
what's the most important story I've been told? We're going to have a debate about which is more important.
Yeah, okay. Because nobody can actually make decisions anymore unless it's framed in a versus B narrative. Is Trump good or bad? Good or bad? Vote now.
No grey on this morning show, Jerry. Only black and white.
No grey, exactly. All right, let's start with the newspapers.
OTBAM. Thanks to Screwfix.ie. Championing the trade with a dedicated call centre.
I'm just going to start with the Irish Times this morning and with the Jim McGuinness column. Some key parts here. Super 8s begin with a bang, not a whimper. People are piling in on the Super 8s, and he's making the point that it was a really damn squib at the weekend, and also making the point that the analysis around defensive systems is completely bogus. At this point, the other glaring development in Dublin's game is that they're more heavily defensive than ever before. There were times when Dublin had all 15 men behind the ball. There is a myth at large that Tyrone, and to a lesser extent Galway, are the last remaining proponents of the defensive game. That witch hunt needs to stop, Brolly. Oh, sorry, the Brolly bit was deleted or never existed. Dublin are just as defensively oriented when it suits them, and Kerry also dropped back in huge numbers during the Galway game. The idea that Dublin are still some kind of advert for flamboyant attacking, for total football, is is that too many are willing to uphold. Who are the deluded? Who is the leader of the deluded?
Does anyone actually believe that Dublin are all out attack? I don't think. I think he's kind of pointing out what we already know.
Anyone who's seen them play, like the biggest red herring that gets thrown out there is Tyrone aren't defensive. They scored 220 the other day. It's like you can be defensive and score a lot. If your defensive system is good and you counter-attack well, you can score a lot.
He's talking directly to Joe Brolly here.
Yeah.
This is I'm using my column to talk to, because you've been attacking me in your column.
Do you notice?
But I'm actually rising above you by not mentioning you, and fair play to him.
There are a lot of people biting back. Stephen Poacher seems to be, the Carlow coach, seems to be regularly going in on these analysts that are just lazily making those sort of suggestions. I was in Croker on Saturday night. Oh, it was drab to watch, wasn't it? It really was septic.
It was bad.
Like Tyrone versus Roscommon.
My parents were at the game after I got them tickets, and they complained bitterly that I gave them tickets, going, "You knew what you were doing. You knew what you were doing sending us that game."
Yeah,
It's the worst game we've ever seen.
I got tickets for my brother, and he sent me a message at, I think, half-time of Tyrone Roscommon, just the word septic. Kind of tells you what it was about.
Jim is right, though, in terms of maybe the selective analysis of the likes of Tyrone, of the likes of Galway. Like Dublin, and certainly, like I wasn't at Croke Park on Saturday, so I wouldn't have appreciated what Dublin were doing without the ball, but certainly on Sunday, like quite often Galway were keeping 12 men behind the ball and Kerry were keeping 13 men behind the ball without the ball. So who's the more defensive team in the context of Sunday? Granted, we're only judging it on one day alone when Kerry for some reason played Peter Crowley as a sweeper, so it is a bit of an anomaly, but there is truth in what Jim is saying, for sure. There is a selective analysis.
Do you know what I thought was a big no-no for Donegal as well? Like, the way when Dublin have the ball, there's always a guy changing direction. So, like, if you're coming off my shoulder, you're not running the same direction as me. You're going to cut that way, or like Niall Scully for his goal. He kept coming off the wing and darting inwards and then being able to jink left and right, and he'd have someone else coming off his shoulder. Like, the amount of times that a Donegal guy would be running forward at the ball, the goals would be that direction, and the player is just coming directly at him. And I thought it was thoughtless running, and it made me think again. The absence of Paddy McBrearty is huge here.
Yeah, because there's supposed to be a third person, isn't there? Like, those runs are, you run one way, I run at you, and then the third person comes in there in space, because everybody,
and also the fact that this is the guy who's used to being the focal point of the attack all the time, the guy who always stands on the 6-yard box, the 14-yard line, whatever it is, and he knows what angles to be running from there. Whereas I felt like Jamie Brennan, I think, is a really good player, really promising. Is he ready to be like the guy up there just yet? I'm not sure. And I just thought that too often Donegal guys were coming out and they're running directly at where the man was coming from, which kind of bottled up their whole attack. No, it wasn't the only reason, but I definitely think it contributed to their downfall.
I do think this is interesting, though, that the pundits should be having spats with each other. It's far more entertaining when they call each other out on the stuff that they think is bogus. And
but let's call a spade here. Brolly got it completely wrong when it comes to his analysis of Kerry post Cork. Like saying that they found this new style of football, that they've somehow returned to their roots, and Fitzmaurice woke up one morning and was like, tradition is actually far more important than winning matches, and I'm going to prioritise that over the prioritisation of kind of shoring up my defence after what happened against Mayo last year. What was he basing that on? He was basing that on games against Clare and Cork, and to say that this sort of tradition has been prioritised is nonsense when you look at the performance against Galway on Sunday. Completely, like he's got it wrong, and Jim is calling him out to a certain extent on that, not directly on that evidence, but as you say, like once you see it, like because he's been so hard against that Donegal team, against the Galway team, and to a certain extent the Tyrone teams, it's like it's fair game.
Go on.
Were you worried going into the game last Friday that, or like I suppose coming into the game on Sunday, that you were being set up for a fall as a Kerry guy, because you've all these young players, you had spanked Cork and spanked Clare, and that you were coming in against a Galway team that probably has just as much pace as the supposed pace that Kerry now have. But they're possibly a bit more physically seasoned. Their players would probably be a couple of years older, so I imagine they're stronger.
I think the down game in 2010 has always given that seed of doubt. It's like, I wonder if they manage to get tactically perfect, or if Kerry not choke but don't show up. There's always a possibility that sort of system can screw Kerry over, which is exactly what it did on Sunday. And fair play to Galway, they absolutely nailed it. And
you did think they were going to win, though. You didn't think.
Oh, of course I did.
Yeah,
of course I did.
Yeah, and
you arrogantly thought. You thought Kerry would win.
I know, I must be the only person in Kerry who...
We talked about it Friday. I was very concerned for Kerry as well, just because of the physical power of this Galway team.
But then you looked at the supposed fluidity in that forward line and just how ruthless they were in the first couple of games, and you were like, this Galway defence can't possibly handle that, especially if Kerry push up in the sweeper, but they didn't do that, did they?
Is the Kildare train stopping, Ger, after the loss to Monaghan?
I totally forgot to go. I told you so. Momentum is bullshit. With the whole, Kildare have the momentum now, they've won a couple of games.
Well, no, the reason Monaghan beat them was because they built up a little bit of momentum after beating 3 Division 4 teams in the bounce in the qualifiers.
Oh, yeah.
Their momentum was greater than the other
Yes,
momentum.
that's how it works. Walking the tightrope is the front page headline on the Examiner. Mike Quirk and John Fogarty on testing times for the Kerry management. I know you've been poring over the dispatches from Kerry on.
Yeah, it seems Mike Quirk and Tomas O'Shea both in agreement that Kieran Donaghy should have seen some action. They're both in agreement that Peter Crowley shouldn't have been stationed as a sweeper, and they're both in agreement that they were the two biggest elements that they got wrong on the line, but they also are in complete agreement that the players just did not perform anywhere near their ability, and it's mentioned with a couple of the big names who you would expect to show up this weekend. It will be a real anomaly if the likes of Paul Ganey, David Moran and Paul Murphy had terrible games back to back. Even if they were any bit decent last weekend, they would have probably kind of at least narrowed it down a small bit. It wouldn't have been a 7-point deficit at one stage.
Like, we all know Kieran Donaghy's a brilliant player and has been down through the years, but he is Plan B, and he's very different to what Plan A is.
Can I just
Does not suggest Plan A.
Can I just ask one point on that? So when you talk to Nathan about Mayo against Kerry and the importance of Donaghy, like there's a ghost in Mayo football that is Kieran Donaghy walking through it, plundering their All-Ireland dreams. He has literally done exactly the same thing to this set of Galway players.
Yes.
So it's fine to change your Plan A depending on who's playing and go, well, Plan A is going to be Donaghy this week and we're just going to pick him for this game, and next week we don't have to use him, but all of a sudden nobody knows what we're going to do, as opposed to we're going to have the young lads and go with Ganey and that inside line. So and when you talk about the ghosts, there's only one reason why Kerry looked so far superior to Galway last year, and it was because of Kieran Donaghy. Now granted, David Walsh was playing his first ever championship game, I think, and was given the job of marking Kieran Donaghy, which wasn't easy, but surely there's some element of it's like, it's only 12 months on. Paddy Talley and the whole influence of the defensive system hasn't completely changed them. They've come on leaps and bounds and are probably the most improved team in the championship, but they haven't changed that much. Surely the thing that worked so well for you last year can kind of work again this year. At least give the guy 20 minutes to play. And I think the Killian Young sending off was the reason why he didn't come on, but I don't know.
Galway went through Division 1 this year. They were far more ready for Kerry this year.
It's true.
I mean, that is definitely all true, but not to give yourself that chance or even that option. Tyrone to be outnumbered in Omagh. This is Declan Bogue's story. Dublin to have more supporters on the home side. The reduced capacity for Healy Park is 17,636, presumably for an all ticket. There's a reduction in capacity, I don't know. Wikipedia has it at 25. Is that what we said the figure was?
Yeah, but the Wikipedia, like, obviously they fluctuate so heavily. Like, you can sometimes look at the list of attendances on Wikipedia or capacities on Wikipedia, and then you click into the hyperlink on the stadium, and suddenly it's 10,000 more when you look at the little sidebar in the profile. So you never know, but 25,000, if you Google Healy Park capacities, what comes up?
So the main stand holds 4,500. It's going to be split with clubs in Tyrone and Dublin, each getting 1,900 each. Dublin took their full allocation. All the season ticket holders, of which Dublin has a full subscription of 2,500, along with 1,000 Parnell Park season ticket holders, and Tyrone's 1,200 are going to be on the terraces for the evening, and the remainder ends up being split. So more Dubs than Tyrone supporters in Omagh.
It's a brilliant venue. I remember covering a Dublin league match up there a couple of years ago. The place was fairly thronged. Dermot Connolly scored an unbelievable winner right at the end. I think he cut it over with the outside of his boot from the 45. It's a pity he won't be there, isn't it?
Eh?
But it's going to be some occasion. One of the worst press boxes going, because There's a glass shield in the press box, and you actually can't hear the atmosphere. It's a bit like same with McHale Park in Castlebar as well. So
Prawn sandwiches.
yeah, everyone's worried about how the journalists experience it is, though. I'm sure.
Yeah, it's true. It's a real pity that those games weren't the first games. I think that would have fixed everybody's complaints about the Super 8s if this week's games in the provincial grounds had been first. People are making the case now that there should be no games in Croke Park until the All-Ireland football semi-finals.
Yeah.
I fully agree with that. At this point, I fully agree with that.
Oh, the thought of Dublin against Roscommon, if it's a dead rubber in Croke Park.
What if the hurling quarterfinals were on in Croke Park?
Oh, they'd be lost there.
Similarly
they used to be. Was it 07 was the most recent time? No, they've been definitely there more recently because Cork beat Antrim there, I think, in 2010. But like, the games are lost there. And I was actually looking up last night how many hurling games have been in Croke Park this year. So how many do you think?
None?
One,
yeah. Just
Leinster final.
The Leinster final. And that was lost there. Like, that was the same day as the Munster final, Cork-Clare, which was a brilliant game.
Who was the Leinster final? Galway and
Kilkenny, 18 points each.
Like,
and it was
Galway and Kilkenny should come to a deal and say, it's home and away now, lads. We're going to be in this final more often than not for the next decade. It's home and away. What do you think? And do it in Nolan Park one year and do it in Galway the next.
Yeah, there's been 5 championship games in Hurlers, and every one of them have actually been brilliant. I don't know what it is. It's slightly smaller. It's the right size. Like, Thurles is the sort of place that even if you had 5,000 there, there's actually still a pretty good atmosphere with the low stadium. I think it's like 45. It might be even more.
And so I missed the crowd figures for the game in Thurles at the weekend. Was it decent?
It was only 18, but again, it felt like there was a lot there.
Because the 10 the previous day seemed like it was completely empty, cavernous.
Parky Queeve, yeah, that just it sucks the life out of it.
It's mad, isn't it? That it's the same figures that they got for that under 21 game 12 months previous. What was that? That was almost 15, was it? At one stage, it was between 10 and 15. Like, it's extraordinary to think that, and it is just because of pure geography.
So the Irish Independent back page this morning, Fitzmaurice should start Donaghy. That's Tomás O'Shea. I did think I saw a headline saying, or a tweet anyway, from somebody retweeted today that Tomás O'Shea on the weekend had said Kerry could batter Galway. Was that true? Did he pre-match? It's harsh if somebody's digging that out, and if it's not true, I apologise, Tomás.
I think he said something along those lines. He was certainly tipping Kerry in his Saturday column, but he didn't go too in depth.
Uncertainty over Fitz's Wexford future. The Davy Fitz thing, 2 years is about right?
Yeah, I'd imagine he'll give it another year. You do have to question, is this working or not? Because like, the sweeper system is great, but I think it kind of, and he's done really well. Like, the first season, they made huge strides, and he got to a Leinster final. But like, after that, you have to worry, where's the development here? I'm sure there is a development, and he's trying to bring it on. And, you know, like the whole Jim McGuinness thing, where he starts off really defensive, and he gradually makes it more attacking. But you have to wonder with Wexford, have people figured the team out? You don't really look like you're going to kick on and beat Kilkenny or a Galway. A Galway more so.
We'll come back to that in a couple of minutes' time. We'll do that draw as well. Apologies, we're having a few streaming issues at the moment. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be back